Creating CGI characters, it's a tricky business, isn't it, Mason?
It's the magic of Hollywood.
It is sometimes, but sometimes that magic turns into...
Tragic.
That's good. Thank you. When this happens, who's to blame? You know what I mean?
The CGI guys.
I disagree because there's, there's time constraints, there's money
agree.
constraints.
Absolutely, yeah.
If anything, it's big Hollywood producers with their big ideas and their tiny brains.
Well, you can blame the big guys if you want. I'm going to blame the small guys.
Fair
I'm
enough.
going to say it's the guys working 16-hour days in small hot rooms in front of computers. I blame them. Those absolute dogs.
So I thought, hey, off the back of the genie being revealed for the new Aladdin reboot, which people were not a fan of at all.
It looks like someone tried to make the genie in The Sims 4, and this is what it looks like.
Let's talk about some other CGI characters throughout
Okay.
history, recent history, I guess.
Okay.
That people don't love or look terrible despite limitations and being
And the
stuck in a
fact that
hot
their
room.
animators were bad. Now, so in this, does that mean, because, obviously the Aladdin genie, it's Will Smith's human head
Yes.
on what is presumably not his body. They don't have to be entirely CG. They can
No.
be, okay, right. They can be half and half.
Exactly. But
Yeah.
this one is entirely CG. If you Google bad CGI, this is normally one of the first results. The Scorpion King.
Well, I Googled terrible CGI characters.
Yes.
And Google Images' first results were the Scorpion King, another character, and then the Scorpion King again. I think the first bunch of results of the score, like he's the MVP of terrible CGI.
Absolutely.
Because I think this was in the era when CGI was a thing you could do, but it's not a thing you should do.
Yes.
It was, okay, we can make a character that looks like a PS1 cutscene character. Should we put that on the big screen? Yep.
Definitely. It's strange because The Rock is also in that movie as a human. You see
Yes.
him running around.
That's
And
right.
then at the end, he turns up as a CGI character. I don't understand why they didn't just get him in to do the top half of the
Yeah,
Scorpion
right?
King and just
Yeah.
do the... I mean, maybe it was a money thing and a time constraints thing, but that looks... Even at the time, I remember going, whoa, that is rough.
And again, it's the key is the face.
Yes.
It's glossy, it's got no texture, and it's got dead eyes. It's not good, mate.
It's horrendous.
horrendous.
My favourite bit in that, though, is where Brendan Fraser stabs the Scorpion King, and then there's a beat. And then the mummy runs in and goes, no! There's like a weird moment where before he runs on to do
right.
that. Anyway, you'll see footage of it. You'll love it.
I love it.
Anyone else come to mind?
What about, it's not the worst thing I've ever seen, but by the fact of what came before it, I think The Thing.
Yes.
In the remake, that was also a prequel, because John Carpenter's The Thing from the 80s was an entirely prosthetic puppet, and it was gross and horrific and creative in terms of what it was. It was this...
People didn't like it at the time because it was very upsetting.
Yeah, and nowadays we do like it because it's so upsetting.
Yeah.
And it's this sort of polymorphing creature that can be a human, and then their head comes off the human, and then their head grows spider legs and skitters across the screen, or somebody is digging into a human's chest cavity, and then the chest cavity turns into a mouth and bites their arms off. By comparison, the remake of The Thing, it's toothless figuratively and literally. It's just this sort of amorphous mass. I think the final scene in the spacecraft, it's just this sort of mush of flesh with a human face on it, and it's just not...
I barely remember that.
See, exactly.
Yeah.
You can remember any number of
I remember
iconic...
the dog's head splitting apart in The Thing, the original thing.
Yeah, exactly.
I know that, though, they did make a bunch of practical effects for this. And then they just CGI'd over the top. Like, the higher-ups, the
bean counters.
The bean counters came in and said, well, that doesn't look too realistic because if you film it from this angle, it's not going to work.
And then the CGI guys went, I don't care, we're terrible at this. I'm going to do it anyway, you can't stop me.
No, I mean, they were looking at filming prosthetics and they were going to enhance it a little bit with CGI. And they said, yeah, but if you look at the prosthetics from this way, it's not going to look realistic. But it's like, we're not going to film it from that way. We're going to film it from front on, you fucking idiot.
Yeah.
So, yeah, they replaced pretty much the entire thing to the detriment of that okay film from memory.
It's mostly pretty good.
Yeah, but the CGI really throws it though.
And again, it's not the worst in the world, but given what it came from, you want a remake to be a step up and to have that same vibe, and it just didn't.
You know what is the worst in the world?
Yes, I'm ready.
Steppenwolf from Justice League.
Okay, earlier when I said if you Google terrible CGI characters and it's the Scorpion King and another character and then a lot of the Scorpion King, the next one is Steppenwolf.
Right, yeah.
So that's quite recent, which is probably why it's high up in the ranking. But it's also high up in the ranking because it is just atrocious.
Design-wise, it's not good either.
And it does look
unfinished and grey.
It looks unfinished. Again, it's cutscene quality.
Yeah, and it's also
it looks like I want to press X to not die on it. You know,
it's also uninteresting.
Yeah,
because it's like a lot of DC villains. It's just a monochrome grey hulking person with fire and smoke around it. You know, jumping about or whatever. It's just not compelling at all. Yeah.
Well, speaking of hulking, what about the Abomination from the Incredible Hulk?
Great. Yeah.
No, see, that's and I think we hit this era for some reason. We got...
I don't remember being offended by it. I think looking back, it's more than at the time.
Yeah. I think in terms of design, at least it has... It's a slight departure from the comic book version, but they went, okay, well, what if realistically you tried to make a man as big as the Hulk from the inside? Like all his sinews would spill out and kind of, you know...
the bones and that are jutting forth.
So in that case, I think it's actually not that bad, but I think maybe at the time the CGI technology had not caught up to where they wanted it to be.
He's also not a weird lizard man with like pointed ears either.
No, that's true.
Apparently they didn't put the ears on because they thought the Hulk would just bite him off, so we won't give him the pointed ears.
Even the lizard from The Amazing Spider-Man was not particularly lizard, was it?
No. The Star Wars re-releases are rife with added CGI characters. We've of course got the young Jabba the Hutt who meets with Han Solo,
which was CGI'd over a regular man, right? So originally we didn't know who Jabba the Hutt was going to be in the original Star Wars. So he's just a man in like a furry vest.
Yes, they were going to replace him with like a Wookiee furry kind of esque character, like a stop motion character. That was the original idea, but budget and time they got rid of it. And then by the time the third one rolled around, they'd redesigned him.
Yeah.
The contrast between the version that shows up in the 1997 version and then the Return of the Jedi, it's night and day. Like, they don't look... They might not even be the same character.
Yeah, they could be brothers, maybe, or a father-son team.
They redid it for a later release, again with CGI, but it still doesn't look that much better. But there's also other characters. Are you familiar with John Yowza? Or
John Yowza?
Or Joagaznan Kachil Burkexton Etnum Dick Brooks?
I mean, the second one, yeah. The first one I'm going to use now every time I'm surprised.
John Yowza.
John Yowza!
John Yowza.
Tell me about John Yowza.
John Yowza and Cy Snootles were... Well, Cy Snootles was already a character in the original Return of the Jedi, but they redid her with CGI for the musical number.
Oh, yes.
I think it's called Jedi Rocks or something.
Love it.
And they added a few new characters, one of them being John Yowza. And he's running around and singing. And there's a moment where he runs up to the screen and you can see right in his mouth. And it's just too close.
Yes.
And it's so jarring compared to everybody else who's in that room.
Yep.
Because they're all puppets and people with dumb helmets on and whatever.
Sure.
And it's horrible. It's also not a good song. I also feel it's strange in movies where they replace actors with CGI versions and then you get real up close. Like it happens in Spider-Man 3, you see up close of Tobey Maguire. It happens in Superman Returns, you see up close of Brandon Routh. But the one that really stood out for me was in The Matrix Reloaded, where he's going up against all the Agent Smiths. And there's a moment, a very jarring moment,
where he converts to CGI.
Yeah, and he's just doing all sorts of flips and kicks.
There's at one point he's fighting one Agent Smith, then it's two Agent Smiths, then 20 Agent Smiths.
And then it's two again.
Then it's two. Yeah, that's right. They all have to go to lunch.
Yeah.
But then, there's a moment where they went, okay, well, I guess we can't effectively blue screen 50 Agent Smiths around a real Keanu Reeves, so let's just CGI Keanu Reeves from this point forward, and it just looks...
It's rubbery and bouncy.
Oh my god.
Yeah.
Again, that's right in the sweet spot of, we can do this, but we shouldn't do this, but we're going to anyway.
Because the appeal of that original movie was the martial arts that they actually did.
Yeah, right,
on
exactly.
wire work.
Yeah.
And I think they probably thought, well, we can't actually do the things we want to do, so we'll CGI it. Well, then maybe pull it back a little bit.
Yeah, right.
Because that fight, I think, is really good up to that point.
It really is.
Yeah.
If they just stuck with 20 Agent Smiths. I mean, you could have just said it was, a quiet neighborhood and they only had 20 people to work with or something.
Push it to 22 if you're feeling bold.
Exactly. Or you could just say, okay, well, he's bringing more Agent Smiths, but he gets out of there before they all get there. You know? But no, he had to fight 100 of them, and it just...
And it was really good. That's what we're talking about.
I think it was bad.
Yeah. I felt there was a disconnect between The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings
I was just going to say The Hobbit. That was going to be my next one.
Yeah. Well, what for you?
Well, The Hobbits, with the exception of Smaug, which I think is quite well done.
Agreed.
Every other character. But specifically, I believe there's an orc. There's a very specific, albino orc.
That one...
Is it Azog?
Yeah.
Azog?
They're all named similar things. I don't remember because I barely remember those movies. But all the orcs in the original Lord of the Rings films, they're mostly
men in makeup.
Pretty much all the orcs in this are CGI. I mean, some are better than others, obviously, but I think that's another reason those films feel very different for me, is because of that advance in CGI technology, but it feels like there's more green screen, there's more CGI characters.
Right.
There's more unrealistic flipping and kicking and jumping about.
The Hobbit and the Lord of the Rings movies, the CGI was done by Weta, New Zealand's Weta, who are basically the best there is.
Yeah.
And if you wanted them to make photorealistic orcs, they could have done it. You just need to give them the time and the money to do that. And I guess in this, they didn't give them the time. Like Peter Jackson had to overhaul a bunch of designs, I think, at the last minute.
Yeah.
And so they just went, okay, now it's all new
It
designs.
shifted directors as well, so the entire look changed of the movies.
So he went, okay, we'll just do this. And I think they just put out the best they could.
Which was bad.
Which was bad, actually, yeah. But again, if they'd gone, okay, we'll give you another year, they could have looked incredible. Absolutely. And the whole movie suffered as a result of not doing that.
I don't disagree. Yeah, look, there's obviously other examples. There's the space monkey from Lost in Space called Blurk or Blarp or Plork.
Well, I think it's Blark.
Okay, great. People don't really like the CGI Tarkin or Princess Leia from Rogue One. I don't think they're the worst examples. I think they're some of the best examples, but it's so close to being human, but not quite right. It's a bit I find it very off-putting.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, but if anyone's got any other examples, please feel free to leave them below.
Honorable mentions to the Dark Seekers in I Am Legend.
Oh yeah,
they were bad.
Just use real zombies.
Just use real people
Anyway, we do videos every Sunday, Tuesday, and Thursday. I'm at Mr. Sunday Movies on Twitter and YouTube and Facebook.
At Wikipedia Brown, and I'm also on Instagram somewhere.
That's right. We also have a podcast called The Weekly Planet where we talk movies and comics and TV shows. It comes out every Monday. Give it a bloody listen if you want. You like podcasts?
Yeah, I do.
Then you can listen too.
Thank you.
But just you.
Thank you.
Nobody else.
I'm fine with that. As long as I get to listen. Also, Doomsday. Doomsday was bad.
Oh,
we didn't get to him, but he was one of the worst.
Oh, yeah. Boo. Okay, guys. I'll see you later.
Grab that gem, you guys. We'll see you next week.